So, we've gotten asked this for a long time. Like, why don't you do a segment on Taibbi? Why don't you do a segment on Taibbi? And, we've been honest. Like, I haven't been happy with the direction that his reporting has taken post October 7th, where he made a rule for himself not to cover Israel. And increasingly, that makes his reporting incredibly out of tune with the historical moment and really useless to his readership. Just absolutely pointless because it's a subject that touches on so many things. How can you cover an election where they're arguing about their position on Palestine? You can't cover it, right? How do you cover it if you're not going to talk about Israel? Um, I've seen him kind of struggling, like with the ICE and suppression of speech. I guess I've been hoping that he would come to his senses, that he would recover, because I'm very often asked what book should I look at that really influenced you. This is to me like a seminal book about why the media is the way it is today, how it got that way, and I still consider it that. I just don't see very much evidence of the person who wrote this book in the writings and pronouncements of Matt Taibbi today. Now, I take no joy in doing this segment. Usually me and Keaton were a couple of nasty bastards from New York who don't mind getting a little blood in our teeth. But in this case, it's sad, man. It's sad. I was hoping I was never going to have to do this segment. With recent developments, I feel like, what we promised from when we had, 50 subscribers is we would never lie to you. We can't promise not to be wrong. That's impossible. But we can promise to be honest. This is to the point, if we don't cover this, we're not being honest with you. So that's why we're covering it. It brings me no joy, I assure you. So with that, as you might have heard, Paramount in talks to buy Bari Weiss's Free Press for up to $200 million and give her a senior editorial role at CBS News. So this has been the source of much conversation. So Matt Taibbi, to many people's shock, weighed in with this. On Bari Weiss CBS and legacy media's tears, the jealous losers complaining about Weiss's CBS deals are like spaniels who not only expect their master to feed them, but to cut the canned food in bits. Now, this got some immediate reactions. Blakely, this is humiliating. Simple, but it says it. Zaid Jalani, suddenly Taibbi is pro-corporate media, and anyone who criticizes it is just jealous. All those posts of his about NBC or CNN were just jealousy. Janine Eunice, wow, this is incredibly disappointing coming from you. Bari Weiss has a decades-long record of being a total hypocrite on free speech, touting the idea when it's anti-woke speech and trying to get people fired when it's pro-Palestine speech. This is going back to her college days. Her publication is little more than a platform for atrocity denial. It's been sad watching you fail to take a hard line against the censorship we've seen over the past 2 years on Israel-Palestine, instead repeating old hits about the Biden administration, even though they aren't in office anymore. I tried to give you the benefit of the doubt for almost 2 years, but openly taking the side of a genocide cheerleader who's also a fraud on free speech is the last straw, as it has been for us and for others who I've noticed. Would they change the name of their thing to Revolutionary?
Oh yeah, Jen and Peter. Yeah, Peter did a good segment on this, and on that note, revolutionary change was used to be generational change with Jen and Peter. They're on a roll. Their channel's doing well. Good for them. But yeah, he mentioned, because he had Taibbi on the show multiple times, as have we. And he said that he reached out to him and invited him to come on to talk about it before he did that segment. And he said not only did Taibbi did right back, not only did he declined and said he has no interest in talking about Israel. Still, made it a point to state that.
Right.
Like,
Right.
hey, not only am I not coming on, but I'm not interested in talking about Israel.
Right.
Which again, this is one of those issues where it runs up right against it. So if
Right.
you cover this without mentioning that, you are hiding the key part of the story from the readers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like this seems to have been a lot of people who have an affection for Taibbi, who've kind of been taking a wait and see attitude. This was the final straw. Like this was crossing the Rubicon. It was just you couldn't stay silent anymore after this. It's interesting. It hit so many people the same way. So my own contribution to the genre of responses to this tweet. This really breaks my heart. Matt is officially into his Vegas lounge act years. I don't get it. Do they have pictures of him next to a dead hooker in St. Petersburg? What the actual fuck? And frankly, I have to wonder, but we'll talk more about that. Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit on Bari Weiss CBS and Legacy Media's Tears. So this first part, he really takes a shot at the nation for lacking business savvy, and he goes on to take a shot at the New York Times for being woke. So this is some of that. The Nation effectively banished Aaron Mate, whose work for the magazine won him the Izzy Award for independent journalism. The Nation griped that Aaron was, quote, playing into the hands of the Trump administration by questioning the Trump Russia story. The magazine also exiled esteemed Princeton professor Stephen Cohen, husband of editor Katrina vanden Heuvel, and Walsh told The New Yorker, that's Joan Walsh, she believed Glenn Greenwald's disdain for the Russia story was due to his unhappiness about the ascendance of women and people of color in the Democratic Party. In other words, the Nation closed the door to three of the most bankable writers on its side of the political aisle and burned one of its most ardent supporters in Cohen as a witch at the end of his life because A, it wouldn't pay real wages, and B, it was committed to face planting the Russia story. Now it's slamming CBS for entering into a $200 million deal with the quote, vile grifter Weiss, whose political views might not be everyone's cup of tea, but she sure busted her ass to build the free press from nothing into a financially healthy news organization.
Well, we
It
did
is,
that over here. Why don't you give us 200 million?
yeah, give us 200 million. Well, as Tim Dillon pointed out, he should get a billion.
Yeah.
But the facts of what happened at the Nation notwithstanding, his core premise is completely wrong, as we will see. And frankly, I think it's pretty sleazy to hide behind the names of actual journalists who still do actual journalism, who have not taken what is arguably the most important issue of their historical moment off the table for vague and ill-defined reasons. At which point, hey man, you feel like you can't cover that, just fucking retire and stop embarrassing yourself. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you still doing this? It, why would you read a food critic who has half their tongue missing? Like, sure, they could describe what it tastes like to them if you have all your taste buds and you could taste salt and sugar. The food review is going to be of absolutely no value to you because it's missing the key ingredients that would be relevant to that story. If you can't cover that, you should retire. You should stop. If they have shit on you, if you are compromised in some way, retire, man. Retire. Why? You didn't save your money? Come on, man. Here's Aaron. Here's Aaron, who he hides behind in this article. Just to get ahead of the inevitable, let's all go ahead and congratulate Bari Weiss on also becoming the next court-mandated dean of Columbia Journalism School. That's a man who's doing journalism, who's not compromised. Glenn Greenwald has been on this beat for years. It's a very funny person to mention in this article. I think that's quite intentional. New York Times' Bari Weiss falsely denies her years of attacks on the academic freedom of Arab scholars who criticize Israel. This is from years ago. This is 2018. He's been on Bari Weiss for like almost
Oh
a
yeah,
decade.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and this is in response to the CBS deal itself. To be fair, at least there is finally some room for Israel supporters in the U.S. corporate media. That at least is progress. Glenn with his characteristic wit. All right, so going on here. I've had differences with Bari Weiss. I've disagreed with her politics more than once. Elaborate? No. And mistook her arrival on the Twitter Files project as a sign that I would be squeezed out. I also wasn't sure about the decision to pick the start of work on the Twitter Files as the moment to launch the free press. As a reporter with zero business sense, I couldn't imagine taking on something else at that harried moment. But this is who Bari is. She combines an innate sense of audience with rare entrepreneurial energy. Is he angling for a job as a press agent? Seems kind of that way.
Yeah. I
Additionally,
mean,
she
she's a lesbian. He should know that.
yeah. Additionally, she understood in a way her spineless, now complaining former colleagues from the mainstream press world never did, that in order to survive and retain her audience, she would need to take risks and bet on herself. After building a broad roster at the Free Press, she's taking a $200 million offer to save desperate, near extinct CBS News. Naturally, every entitled, fat keistered slob clogging the rolls of non functional news organizations is crying she doesn't deserve it. How many of these plaintive mannequins denouncing her grift would have the guts to leave one of the cushiest gigs in the print media and bet on themselves in the open market? 0.0%, as in not one. Journalism is dying because of a succession of factual disasters, but the major cross-industry problem is a universal belief that audience is owed. Modern journalists think your eyeballs belong to them. They see worrying about commercial success as demeaning and are often happier if their work isn't widely read because they believe America's audience is a great moron. Holy straw man, Batman. Okay, I don't think there are any journalists who prefer that their work is not widely read, but I get what you're doing here. You're trying to present these people in the corporate media as villainous ghouls in order to act as a foil for Bari Weiss, who is by comparison some brilliant Randian entrepreneur of the media space, none of which is true. Um, I mean, it is true that these people in the corporate media are ghoulish, but really, what you're doing here, it's kind of like where they saw that Hannibal Lecter was the star coming out of Silence of the Lambs, so they wanted to make him the hero of the next movie. How do you make a cannibal the hero of your movie? You have to offset him with someone who's even worse,
Right.
right? So they did the Gary Oldman character. He's a fan of the playground with a sliced off face, right? They make him worse so Hannibal Lecter can be the avenging angel. That's basically what Matt's doing here, but he's doing it in reverse. Yes, these people in the corporate media like Joan Walsh are horrible ghouls. uh, Bari Weiss is far worse than anyone who's been named so far in that article, or if you read the whole thing, indeed, in the entire article. Now, the idea that these people think their audience are great morons, as he put it, yeah, they think Americans are great morons. You don't think your audience are great morons? Well, let's take a look at your work since early July. What happened July 8th? July 8th, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi announced that there was nothing to see there with the Epstein files. So Matt's right on that, right? Oh, no. CIA report details Russiagate fraud. At last, John Brandon and James Comey under criminal investigation for Russiagate. Brennan and Comey investigations. MSNBC can't stop lying about Trump and Russia. The case against Brennan and Comey. Okay, so Russiagate. Where's the Epstein? Where's the Epstein? He doesn't mention. Huh. That's weird. Russiagate. Still Russiagate. All right, we're into late July here. I don't see anything. More Russiagate. Barack Obama and Russiagate. Okay. All right. So you get the picture. I can tell you, because I went through it, there's nothing about Epstein at all. So you don't consider your current subscribers great morons? Like you expect them to think that's normal? That the most important thing happening at the moment, that's at the moment that story is breaking, is Russiagate. That's the most important story at that moment. A story that they clearly timed because they weren't able to quell the uproar from their own base about Epstein. This is why you cannot decide you're still going to be a journalist and have a whole area that you don't cover, not because you feel like you don't know about it. That's part of your job, right? You're a journalist. If you don't know about it, your job is to become informed about it. I didn't really know what I know about that subject on October 8th. I made it my business and my responsibility to learn more about it. And frankly, I'm quite sure Taibbi knows more than I've learned about it. But for whatever reason, he doesn't want to talk about it. At which point, again, stop embarrassing yourself. Retire. You're embarrassing yourself. You're ruining your legacy by continuing to be in this space under circumstances where, for whatever reason, man, I don't believe it's a natural evolution. It doesn't look that way. It looks to me like they got something on the guy and he's afraid to talk about this. So retire, man. Retire. I mean, I know you got a nut to cover, but you got to have some savings there. So you're talking about Joan Walsh and all these people like they're the most horrible people in the world. It's very weird to do that in defense of somebody who arguably literally got a Palestinian poet killed for, maybe a bad joke, but it was a joke. So if you remember, shortly after October 7th, there were a lot of misleading claims about babies in ovens and this kind of thing. It wasn't very long before even Israeli journalists were disowning these stories. Right? There's an Israeli journalist here. There's a certain story that has been published on social networks in recent weeks. Oven, from checking in with the IDF, Zakah, Shura Camp, and more. You don't know of such an event. Spreading incorrect stories will harm Israeli propaganda. This guy is worried about harming Israeli propaganda. He's certainly not motivated to downplay this, right? He's saying don't make up fake stories because then people won't believe our propaganda. Okay. So that was already out there. The Palestinian poet, I forget his last name right now. It'll come up
Rafat
on the next
Alarir.
slide. Alarir. Rafat Alarir.
Yeah. I'm not sure
So,
if I pronounced his first name right. I apologize, but
well,
that's Rafat Alarir. Yeah.
so somebody reported falsely about the baby being found in an oven. And he made, like it's a bad joke, but if there's any people who should understand the response of gallows humor to horrific circumstances, it should be Jews.
Well, I also think that the reason he made that joke is because it was a debunked story. So he
Well,
was
of
making that
course,
joke to
of
point
course.
out the fact that it was a fake story.
Well,
Right. That was the
of
point of
course.
it.
He's not making
No, he's
light
not
of
making light of
right,
an actual
right,
murdered baby. Right, exactly.
right. So he says with or without baking powder.
Right.
He's pointing out the absurdity
Of
of
the
the
story.
claim,
Right.
of the story. So Bari Weiss calls him out publicly. Here is Rafat Alarir joking about whether or not an Israeli baby burned alive in an oven was cooked with or without baking powder. She's not stupid. She knows damn well what he was doing there.
Right.
But this
Right.
is the statement she makes. He tweets famously now, quote tweets her, if I get killed by Israeli bombs or my family is harmed, I blame Bari Weiss and her like. Many maniacal Israeli soldiers already bombing Gaza take these lies and smears seriously, and they act upon them. And sure enough, January of 2024, Zay Squirrel posted this in June. Today is the 6-month anniversary of Rafat Al-Arir's murder, along with members of his family, including young children, after Bari Weiss put a kill target on him in an active genocide zone. So now this is the person that you're trying to favorably compare to Joan Walsh, the lib, the dumb lib. Is Joan Walsh's dumb libbiness in any way comparable to what Bari Weiss did here, getting this man and his family killed? These people that you have such contempt for in the corporate media, and they're contemptible. We've done plenty of gigs. It's one of the reasons I love this book so much. No argument there. But to take Israel out of a story about Bari Weiss taking over CBS is burying the lead, does not even begin to describe it. And this is why you cannot be a journalist if you will not cover this topic. You need to retire. You need to stop embarrassing yourself. This story broke the dam for so many people, ourselves included, because it's so deranged. To write a story about this and try to make it a story about corporate media stiffs versus the plucky underdog upstart. Never say the word Israel in a story about Bari Weiss taking over CBS and being, which he doesn't touch and really distorts, grossly overpaid, as we will get into, for her glorified fucking blog.
Well, yeah. I'll put this very concisely because I know you're going to get more into the details. The story is the second richest man on earth and number one private donor to the IDF on earth is now, through this merger, this Paramount Skydance merger deal, taking over CBS, and he's picking a fanatical, violent, genocidal Zionist censor to put in charge of it. That's the story.
That's the story.
If you don't mention that, you are not telling the story.
Of course.
It's as simple as that.
You're willfully avoiding the story.
Right.
You're doing such a grotesque disservice to your audience, to your readers, and frankly, for somebody who clearly has a deep affection for the profession of journalism, it is a grotesque crime against journalism to pass that off as reporting, whatever the fuck that article was supposed to be. So here he is, kind of reinforcing the point. It's amazing how people think of every motive but money when looking at the CBS deal. It's a major corporation that needs to regain lost audience. Incredible how many people think these companies can just lose money indefinitely. So this is kind of his core premise that he goes with, that Bari Weiss has been so incredibly successful with the free press that there's no motive to hire her other than they need this new blood from the indie space to reimagine CBS. That's the motive, which, look, again, this is why you cannot be a fucking journalist if you won't cover that subject, because this is batshit. If you know any of the backstory, as you just pointed out, about Ellison, his contributions to the IDF, Weiss's Zionism, even if you think you've got a case that that's not why, well, then you make that case. But he's in a box where he can't even address the case. He can't even address it. So you're writing this article that's from another fucking universe.
Right.
That has nothing to do with the story.
It's a parallel reality. Right.
It's completely irrelevant to this entire story. And it's not even right on the facts. It's not even right on the facts. I never imagined in my wildest dreams that I would be giving lessons in journalism to Matt Taibbi, but here we are. Okay. So this is what you do, Matt. You got a fucking internet connection, right? What you do is you plug in the computer and you Google stuff. You look at like Well, how many views does the free press get on YouTube to justify that value? Not many. Not many. We do better than the free press, most of our videos. Let's see, you got, yeah, most of them are around 10,000, less, 3,000, 5,000. They've got one banner video that broke 200,000. But most of these are, 10, 15 range, less than 10.
This
Uh,
video will definitely do better than all of those when we clip it.
yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
I'm pretty confident in that.
So you want to say, well, the money is not in that. The money is in the subscribers on the Substack, on the blog. Her blog is incredibly, not really. I mean, you can't tell if it's not your page how many views these have gotten, but you could tell how many likes they've gotten. You could tell how many comments they've gotten. What is this? 36 comments on the top left there. 31 likes. 149 on the Amy Coney Barrett comments, 52 likes. I mean, that's pretty much the range of these things. I mean, they're small Substacks do better than that. Like, if anything, with as visible as Bari Weiss is and the free press is, this is really a failed attempt at a news organization. You got randos who do much better than this. So what's justifying that valuation? Where is that money coming from? Where is that money coming from? If it's not coming from, yeah, she has some paid subscribers, not enough to justify a $200 million valuation. And as we see, they don't have a lot of traffic to the site. You don't have a lot of people reading their articles, and you don't have a lot of people watching their videos. So why would this organization even be surviving? Like, why isn't it bankrupt? Okay, so again, here's a lesson in journalism. You type and you search things. Okay, you go into the search engine of your choice, and very quickly you could come up with a wealth of information about where the money to support this organization came from. This organization that certainly doesn't get enough traffic to have survived on its own. Bari Weiss's media startup valued at $100 million in funding round. This is from September of last year. So who's giving it that value? Is from the Financial Times. The Free Press raised about 15 million in its most recent fundraising, according to two people close to the process, valuing it at about $100 million. The fundraise was backed by multiple wealthy individuals, according to one of these people. Weiss has previously raised money from investors such as venture capitalists, including Mark Andreessen and David Sachs. Hedge fund boss Paul Marshall's Old Queen Street Ventures is also among its investors. See how easy that was? See how easy it was to find out where the money for this organization actually comes from? It's coming from a bunch of hedge fund managers and oligarchs, all of whom have a history of influencing and buying media and social media outlets and investing in them in order to push a personal vision, message, and social agenda. Now, this is not new. Does anyone think Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post for the money making potential? This is not a meaningful difference from the corporate media that Matt has so effectively decried all these years. It's just a different faction of the oligarchy. This is internecine violence between the elites. It's one wing of the elites that's attached to legacy media versus a new wing of the elites that works more with podcast bros and people like Bari Weiss that buys up indie media. They see where things are going. They see generationally that's where the energy is. That's where they're putting their money. Um, and they can much more easily push their agenda there because they don't have the old line elites to resist that agenda. They're able to push their message through these outlets. Now, the Matt Taibbi who wrote this, God, man, I wish that Matt Taibbi was around because he would have been the best person to report on this. The reporting that this guy, the guy who wrote this book, could have written such a great book about how these Silicon Valley oligarchs were taking the place of the old William Randolph Hearsts and using independent media to build a very similar kind of ecosystem for the 21st century. This Taibbi wants to tell you about what a great entrepreneur Bari Weiss is. So let's look at who some of these fucking criminal miscreants are that fund the free press. We got Humpty Dumpty there, our favorite, Mark Andreessen, our favorite oligarch. He makes the rounds a lot on friendly podcasts like Joe Rogan that'll fucking give him a nice fucking rusty trombone and not ask any hard questions of him when he comes on. This guy makes his living with dodgy fintech products that have literally destroyed people's lives, destroyed the retirement savings of old ladies. Synapse was a company that imploded. Didn't even take a little money to help make them whole. He could have without even missing lunch. Wouldn't do it. I have no money. Thousands of Americans see their savings vanish in Synapse fintech crisis. There's the same guy who goes on Joe Rogan. We're not going to play the video. I've played it plenty. You can look it up. Mark Andreessen, Do Dissidence. I'm sure it'll come up. Goes on Joe Rogan, talks about how his problem with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is that it's woke. Basically, everything that would hold him accountable for ruining these people's lives is woke. That's woke. I wonder why a guy like this would invest in a media outlet run by somebody with no fucking principles. I wonder why he would invest in that. Because his business, common denominator with all these people, their business is not media. They're in businesses where controlling media is very good for their business. That's why they invest in media, not because it's making money, not because Bari Weiss. I mean, if you're making the argument that Robert Shaw makes in The Sting, what was I going to do? Accuse him of cheating better than me in front of the others? If you're saying Bari Weiss peddled her ass better than you, well, okay, fair enough. Maybe you have like one less shred of your integrity that won't allow you to get fucked by Mark Andreessen. But that's not really an admirable trait in Bari Weiss. David Sachs. David Sachs. Who is this guy? He kind of flies under the radar. Well, now he's the White House AI and crypto czar, but he's also part of that whole PayPal mafia crew who a lot of people don't know this. Most of them have ties to South Africa. Isn't that funny that you got this whole thing about a white genocide in South Africa and all these guys are from South Africa? So we're gonna, this is a couple of minutes, but I think it's worth taking a look at because this is exactly the story that this guy would have written so well if he were still with us today. So let's just listen to this. It's worth checking out.
Who are the PayPal mafia, and how are they linked to apartheid-era South Africa?
Well, they're a group of men who are at the top, the founding of PayPal, all of whom, in some way or other, grew up in South Africa as children. You've got Musk himself, who was born in South Africa and lived there, went to high school there until he was 18 and then moves to Canada. You've got Peter Thiel, who was a co-founder with Musk of PayPal. Thiel was born in Germany but brought to South Africa as a young child. His father was a mining engineer. Lived in Johannesburg and then moved to Southwest Africa, which was then a South African colony, is now Namibia. And he went to school in Swakopmund, which was notorious as probably the last place on the planet where people still openly greeted each other with Heil Hitler and celebrated Hitler's birthday. He went to a German school there before moving to the United States when he was 10 or 11. You've got David Sachs, who was born in Cape Town. He's big in PayPal and is now Trump's AI and crypto czar. He moved to Tennessee as a relatively young child, but grew up in the white South African diaspora there. And you've got Roelof Botha, who was the son of the grandson of Pickwater, the last foreign minister of apartheid South Africa. He was the acceptable face of apartheid. You'll remember he used to run around the United States trying to put a gloss on how they were reforming things and that everything was getting better, which apparently it wasn't. But so you see those four key people at the top of PayPal, and they all have this, very intimate connection to South Africa.
So we.
That sounds like a story for a journalist. That sounds like the kind of thing that somebody who specializes in covering media, who's done a lot of writing about shadowy interests behind reporters, influencing the way they report. Seems like that the guy who wrote this would love that story. I wish he were here. So David Sachs, if you want to look at the profit motive, he has no profit motive. He was one of the people, according to this report, who persuaded Elon Musk to put money into money-losing Twitter. For what purpose, other than to control Twitter? It always lost money. The quiet political rise of David Sachs, Silicon Valley's prophet of urban doom. Like his pals Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, Sachs is using his wealth and online clout to unite conservatives and former leftists in a reactionary movement against liberalism. Sachs is part of the Tesla CEO's shadow crew of friends and consiglieri, according to the Wall Street Journal. Text messages that were recently disclosed as part of Musk's legal battle with Twitter showed that Musk sent his friend Sachs a tweet by conservative huckster Dinesh D'Souza expressing support for Musk's takeover of Twitter. Sachs said he retweeted it. In other messages, the two discussed a potential monetary contribution from Sachs for the Twitter acquisition. Now, why would he do that? Why would he do that? Twitter always lost money, still loses money. Elon was offering twice what it was valued at because it's worth it to them, because their business is not that media platform. They're using that media platform to attack and put pressure on politicians. They're using that media platform to boost and amplify voices that put out the messages that they want put out, to get the conversation steered in directions that are favorable for them in regulatory terms. Look at Andreessen and Elon and Bezos. They were all after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Look how effective it was. Now it's completely gutted. They don't care if these things lose the money in and of themselves. It's gaining them billions and trillions of dollars through the influence they gain from these things, like of which the free press is just one part of their strategy. This one, what could be wrong with a hedge fund Christian evangelist buying up media outlets? I don't see any problem there. How faith drives bidder for Telegraph who wields growing influence on Tories. This is David, right? David Marshall. Marshall, hang on, am I right about that? No, Paul Marshall, Sir Paul Marshall. Marshall, a hedge fund boss, is not yet a household name. Yet he is on his way to building a media empire and accumulating political power to rival Rupert Murdoch's. First, he launched the website Unheard, aimed at Westminster opinion formers. Then he helped fund the populist right-wing news channel GB News, and now owns The Spectator. I added that. That's my editorial note about The Spectator. What sets Marshall apart from other media owners is the way his belief in evangelical Christianity influences his work in media and politics. He worships at Holy Trinity Brompton, HTB, an influential parish church in Knightsbridge in the borough of Kensington and Chelsea, southwest London. HTB, which recently pushed back against plans for the Church of England to bless same-sex relationships, is the center of C of E evangelicalism and the former church of the Archbishop of Canterbury. It also gave birth to the wildly successful Alpha Course, responsible for converting millions of people around the world to Christianity and for encouraging talking in tongues. One of those who found faith through the course was the adventure Bear Grylls, an occasional attendee at HTB, who last week baptized Russell Brand in the Thames. There you go. There's some nightmare fuel for you folks. I had to see it. Now you have to see it. So this is a very wealthy upper crust church known for its wealthy, influential members, like Marshall, like Brand, and they evangelize people into Christianity. And this hedge fund evangelical Christian who belongs to this very elite church in England has been buying up media outlets like they're going out of style. That sounds like a fucking story to me, right? I mean, there's more to this story than just the Israel angle. There's a lot here. You know what probably is the dumbest angle? Joan Walsh is jealous. That's right.
She's a jealous loser.
That's the dumbest angle you could go with here. But there's more. Sir Paul Marshall, the hedge fund manager and co-owner of GB News, who sits on the board of HTB's Church Revitalization Trust, has deleted all of his posts on X after an investigation highlighted that he had liked and retweeted anti-Muslim tweets. One post liked by the account read, "It is just a matter of time before civil war starts in Europe. The native," I'm getting an echo. Do you have a weird setting on there?
No, that happened a couple times on the last show too, and our settings are good.
With Lee? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, to go on. The native European population is losing patience with the fake refugee invaders. Another read, "If we want European civilization to survive, we need to not just close the borders, but start mass expulsions immediately. We don't stand a chance unless we start that process very soon." Okay, so now this is a twist, and I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but I did not know this until I did this research. His son is Winston Marshall.
Oh, wow.
Winston Marshall, one of the two backers of the douchebag dialogues, which was full of journalists from Unheard. You see how it all comes together? It all comes full circle.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
Now that seems like a pretty interesting story. You know what's funny? His dad tweeted out that stuff, and this is from a week ago. The brutal reality of speaking out against the Muslim community in Britain, right? This is not any different from the old corporate media. It's just a new corporate media using different tools and pushing a slightly different agenda. And in the end, me, you, most of the people you know, you're just pawns in a fight between different wings of the oligarchy that have broadly common interests. That's why in the end, George Bush is, getting hugged by Michelle Obama. In the end, most of the fighting you see between these people is WWE. Broadly speaking, they're of the same class. They got each other's backs in the end. So somebody asked, "You are anti-Israel, Matt?" And he responded. He kind of mixed it up with people a little bit. "I don't write about it at all. Everyone seems convinced in their opinion, so why interfere?" Man, I've seen some weak-kneed cop-outs in my life, but that one has to take the fucking cake. So why you're above that conversation because everyone's already formed an opinion. Well, if you feel that way, people are pretty opinionated about most things that they consider important. Why don't you just shut the fuck up and stop writing? Why don't you just stop? Like, you could apply that to anything, right? People have very strong opinions about Russiagate. So why do you talk about that relentlessly, right? Is it because it's before October 7th, so it's one of the only subjects that you can sink your teeth into and pretend that you're still a journalist? It's one of the only subjects you can cover that doesn't involve Israel because it predates October 7th. Is that you want what we haven't seen enough of? We need more Twitter files articles at this moment. We don't need any coverage of Epstein. We don't need any coverage of how you got a weird cabal of Silicon Valley oligarchs taking over the new media. We don't need any. We need more articles about shit from 4 years ago. That's what we need. Pikachu here says, yuck, bad tasting take from Matt Taibbi. Her audience size does not warrant such a large buyout. It is not even close to meritocratic. Seems like there is good evidence it is for propagandistic reasons. And she tags Glenn. Does anyone from Matt's original audience stay subscribed to him? And Matt responded to this. That's ridiculous. Bari's obvious ambition from the start was to build a large traditional news outlet in the independent space. She's the only one who's pulled it off. If Glenn Greenwald built a newsroom, I'd be saying he should get it, but none of us went that way while she did. Well, as I just demonstrated, your fucking core premise is completely wrong because you're refusing to do journalism and you're willfully missing the fucking point. No, she did not build a successful news outlet unless your definition of success is selling out to a group of oligarchs that saw value in pushing the kind of propaganda that she was willing to sell, and probably, I mean, in the case of Zionism, certainly ideologically aligned to. I mean, if that's your definition of success, then you should consider these corporate media outlets to keep going because they get funded from these shadowy interests. You should consider them very successful, right? Everyone who gets money from the arms industry, from pharmaceutical companies. I mean, if your standard is you can get money from people who want to use your platform to spread their propaganda, what's your issue with corporate media? That's exactly what it is. Isn't that the critique? Isn't that the critique? I thought that was the critique. So why is Bari Weiss to be celebrated for that while CNN or NBC are to be pilloried for it? So, you know, Glenn keeps coming up, and it's funny because Glenn is not afraid to say the word Israel or Palestine or Gaza. So he's actually able to cover this story like a journalist. So he says right here, kind of knocking down this whole idea that this company was built up from the ground by pluck and vim and vigor. Most of the videos of the Free Press, including Bari's podcast, barely break 10,000 views on YouTube. On a scale of 1 to 10 for online impact, this might be a 3. You see that, Keaton? We're out of 4.
Yeah, that's right.
Whatever
Yeah.
the 200 million is for, it's not for the real value of her blog, but for Bari's role in spouting Israel propaganda. And he goes on. Larry Ellison's son, a family whose overwhelming cause is Israel, bought Paramount at CBS from Shari Redstone, who has the same cause, and will now give Bari Weiss 100 to 200 million to buy her Israeli state media outlet and put her in charge of CBS News's editorial direction. Now, we're going to give some love here to James Lee, who's actually, I think I could say, a friend of the show. He did a great job summing this up. So maybe this will spark something in Matt. Maybe he'll watch this and his heart will grow 3 sizes. He'll remember what journalism is, what journalism looks like, what somebody who's not living in terror of actually talking about what's actually going on in the actual world in a way that's actually relevant to his actual viewers. This is what that sounds like.
Take a look at who's bankrolling the enterprise. It's the who's who of pro-Israel VCs. You got Mark Andreessen, whose VC firm A16Z has been very public about ramping up investments in Israeli tech. There's also Howard Schultz, the Starbucks billionaire whose foundation pledged to, quote, help Israel heal and rebuild right after October 7th. And speaking of business, if we just take a look at this from a business transaction perspective, it makes absolutely no sense.
I don't care how many, Bari Weiss, whose company is, sold now, is going to sell to CBS for $3 trillion or something. Larry Ellison's son's buying the Free Press. The very important Free Press blog that is on Substack is worth $250 million. And I like Barry, but the one that gets like 7,500 views on YouTube, that powerhouse conglomerate media company is worth $250 million, by the way. So the Tim Dillon show is apparently worth $1 billion. Hello, Miriam.
Yeah, the Free Press, according to what they tell us, has about 155,000 subscribers. So maybe around $15 million a year in revenue. Certainly respectable for a blog, a Substack, but $200 million, that is 10 to 15 times revenue, an insane multiple that makes absolutely no sense, unless you're after something more than subscribers.
The point, though, in the Bari Weiss case is that it is entirely an intellectual sheen on pro-Israel and pro-Zionism. If you read about it, David Ellison and others are genuinely only want to buy the Free Press to support Israel. That's it.
Yeah, let's talk about the guy behind all of this, David Ellison. He's the Hollywood heir who runs Skydance, the company that just took over Paramount and by extension CBS News. But to understand him, you've got to look at his dad, Larry Ellison. Larry built Oracle, a company that literally started on a CIA contract, and today the company powers U.S. intelligence, the Pentagon, and plenty of spy agencies. And Larry isn't just another Silicon Valley billionaire. He's also one of the largest private donors to the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, pouring millions of dollars into Friends of the IDF. He's also close buddies with Netanyahu and hosted Trump for a fundraiser at his Hawaiian estate. And that's why this deal matters, because Paramount's crown jewel isn't Nickelodeon or MTV, it is CBS News. It is the network, like I said, of Walter Cronkite with institutional investigative tentpoles like 60 Minutes. That is the real prize. They don't care about Bari Weiss's blog subscribers. What they're after is Bari Weiss's pseudo-intellectual sheen and her worldview installed inside of CBS. So that the next time CBS runs a story critical of Israel, like when they were instructed not to acknowledge Jerusalem as part of the country, or when they give platform to voices inconvenient for Israel, like Ta-Nehisi Coates. They want someone in the building, like a Bari Weiss, to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Glenn Greenwald, quote, "The so-called Free Press is engaged in one of the most blatant campaigns of atrocity denials in years. That's why the Ellison family, now buying Paramount CBS, wants Bari Weiss in there, in service of a foreign government they are all desperate to protect and whitewash." So let's be clear, this was never about building Paramount into a stronger company. It's not about competing with Substack. This is all about proving loyalty to Israel. That's the play. It's not a media deal. It's tribute. It's insurance. It's a guarantee that the next time CBS 60 Minutes or the Nightly News questions Israel, there is someone inside to kill that story.
Okay, there you go. That's it. And if Matt disagrees with that, he should have written an article explaining why he disagrees with that. But obviously, there's nothing really there to disagree with. What are you going to disagree with? You're really going to argue that a blog that gets often less than 100 comments on its articles, that gets less than 10,000 views on its videos, is worth $200 million on the merits? That they're bringing in the genius that built up that kind of an organization to save CBS and not to act as an agent for Israel in the building. And you know what a bonus is? Remember, all these people, all these Silicon Valley oligarchs, they're all connected. They're all connected. It's a big club and you're not in it. Ellison paying $200 million for that? He's paying off all of these guys who invested in it. They're getting that money. Andreessen's getting paid. Marshall's getting paid. Sachs is getting paid. They're all getting paid, man. They're all making out like bandits. It's a big club. That is the story here. The idea that the story is that, the people at The Nation don't know how to run their business and the New York Times editorial staff is insane. The idea that that's the story, it's it's less that it is a crime against journalism to write an article describing this that way and then to go out and defend it like you did a good job here, like there's something here to defend. I'm sorry, man. We talked about this offline. I'll say it here. When you got the raisin-faced Medusa, as Keaton dubbed her, much to Taibbi's delight, by the way,
Yeah, he
Debbie
liked it.
Wasserman Schmuck, and Plaskett, two more off-putting people you'd be hard-pressed to find, grilling you all day. And then the Biden administration, he was probably too out of it to know what was going on, but somebody there sent the IRS to his house the day he testified. And Taibbi was questioning all of the Democrats and the woke scene. I mean, we questioned that too. That's why we bonded pretty well. We were pretty much in the same place ideologically as people who kind of, were kind of red pilled in the broadest sense of that term by a lot of what happened in the years between 2016 and 2020. That all made sense. And the fact that Taibbi would like cozy up to people like Jim Jordan, who helped him in that situation, I always said that, man. Like, I wouldn't report negatively on Jim Jordan if he did that for me. Like, I would be honest with my audience. Like, I recuse myself from subjects involving him. The guy helped me out when they sent the IRS to my house. All of that was like a sensible evolution. I went on a similar evolution. What's happened since October 7th with Taibbi, I cannot account for. It's not natural. I can't account for it any other way than he is compromised in some way. I don't know what they have over him, but it doesn't make sense. It's not natural. You don't just all of a sudden become a regard. You don't all of a sudden become somebody so stupid that you would write that article as if like that's a good article, right? As if that's something you want to put out into the world. You don't all of a sudden become somebody like that. You don't all of a sudden become somebody who won't report on the Epstein files and just wants to keep replaying your greatest hits from 4 years ago. The guy who wrote this, it's not natural. It's not natural. I believe that they have something on him. That's what I believe at this point. I didn't think that at first, but as I've seen his work get worse and worse and worse and more off base. Look, October 8th, I wrote an article right after October 7th. We dropped it. Taibbi shared it, and it was very much an analysis of how the pro-Palestine movement was the bad karma of critical theory come back to haunt them because they raised all these kids on post-colonial theory, and now they expected them to mean it, and they never did. He shared that, man. He shared that. I don't think he would now. Like, it's gotten worse. But that tells you where his sentiment actually is, as you would expect. I've met Taibbi more than once. Very nice guy. He was always very nice to us. That's why, as I say, I take no joy in doing a segment like this. When I say he should retire, it's partly out of affection, man. Like, he's embarrassing himself. I don't like to see it. I like to see this guy destroying his legacy and his image and his reputation in that way. I would much rather see Matt go fishing. And, for whatever reason that he couldn't report on this, we can speculate, right? But keeping himself out there is just destroying his legacy. I don't know. I can't judge it. I don't know. I don't have a family to threaten. And we're not big enough yet. I mean, in a way, you're better off not getting that big. I don't want anybody coming to me and being like, well, do you want to do what we tell you, or do you want to be checking under your car every morning for the rest of your life? Like, I don't know, but it doesn't make sense. This is not a natural political evolution. This is not Paul Wolfowitz. It does not track with the guy who wrote this. It doesn't naturally proceed from the premises. I believe he's been threatened or there's blackmail material on him. That's pure speculation. I have no evidence of that, to make it clear, but that is what I believe based on the evidence.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even go as far as to speculate in that way, because to me, it's just on the face of it. You see the consequence of declaring a certain topic off limits, especially when that topic is so all encompassing. I mean, for whatever the reason. He told us the reason off the record, and so I won't repeat it. But if you watched his interview with Sabby, which he did around the same time as he did ours, I think they were like days apart.
Yeah.
He told her he had a bad experience covering the issue, meaning the Israel-Palestine issue, and that is sufficient. Like if you heard him say that, the specific, like, I know what the specific incident was because he told us off the air and off the record. If you know that what he said on Sabby publicly, then you know it, right? Like you don't have to know the specifics of it to know that is his story on this. And at a certain point, like I said, I'm not going to speculate as to like anything in terms of threats or blackmail, but I will say that like I frankly don't believe that is the only reason why he doesn't cover this at this point. I don't. It could be audience capture. It could be that you went so hard, and I remember when you were at Rescue the Republic, you asked him, hey, aren't you a little hesitant to throw your lot in with this fucking crew because they look like they're pretty freakish? And he gave you some answer like, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Right.
Well, here we are, man.
Yeah.
Like we're at it. We're at it. They locked the guy in jail for 104 days for his opinion on Palestine. I'm talking about Mahmoud Khalil, which Taibbi wrote a couple of articles about, and then that was it for the whole time.
And that was part of why I held fire too, and probably a lot of other people. I was hoping he'd make his way back.
Right, make his way back into it. But yeah, if you're going to pretend that a Holocaust isn't happening, that's your prerogative. But you can't pretend that a Holocaust isn't happening and then write about stories that, even if tangentially, are still very much related to that ongoing Holocaust, and cover them with any modicum of seriousness.
Right.
Because you are just intentionally sidestepping the whole point of the story. To act as if this is a story about jealousy and egos within the media is just nonsense. And frankly, given the immense wealth of the characters involved, I don't believe money is a motivator at all. What do they need CBS News to make? But what the fuck does David Ellison need CBS News to be in the black for? What, she's going to bring her business acumen to CBS News because he needs that to generate profit? Why?
Do you see that last video? It cracked 15,000 views.
Even if she was a business genius, even if she was a successful businesswoman, they don't need that at CBS News. Larry Ellison doesn't need that at CBS News. They need a narrative manager at CBS News. That's why they have CBS News
exactly
now. And their choice in, whatever she will be, the de facto editor-in-chief, I guess, however it's referred to in the TV world, is very, very obvious. It's very, very obvious what they want her there for. And to, tighten up the operation and make it more profitable and streamlined is not the motivation. That is quite obvious. It is really about as obvious as could be.
Please clap.